Hi, welcome to another session of weekly discussions. This session would be dedicated to discussing some new topics, something more fascinating. So let's start before you start, please do hit the subscribe button down there. That would help me. That would definitely help me out. And do hit like and share with your friends who you think might be benefited by watching the sessions. So today's session would be all about starting something new. As we always do, we learn something new. Today we'll be learning about convolution neural networks on networks on tabular datasets, but not exactly on tabular dataset. Not exactly convolution neural networks, but a special kind of convolution neural network. So that is soft ordering one-dimensional convolution network. That what the topic is about. Then we proceed to different kind of callback strategies which are used and adopted. Apart from it, we will also learn about gradient annealing techniques. So I think that would take up the majority of the time. If we are left with some of the time, we might take something else. Alright, let's begin. Let me share my screen. So as you can see, the first topic is convolution neural networks on tabular datasets. What this topic is all about? So this topic is built upon a competition which was hosted by Kaggle, which was mechanisms of action competition, which was hosted by Kaggle. The objective of the competition was to predict the mechanism of action. Final standings are very tight. In this article, we will review the CNN model used by second place solution. In the first, we this. Alright, the final summation was an ensemble of one-dimensional convolution neural net and a tabnet. However, the one-dimensional convolution neural net itself would have obtained a fifth position, and that was the idea. So that is why this particular article is about. So usually Kaggle competitions, if you want to be in top 10, top 20, you need an ensemble of the different models. However, if a single model, that is one-dimensional CNN, is able to achieve in top 5, that is the brilliancy of this model. So why not discuss about it? This particular paragraph is about what CNNs are. So you already know what CNNs are. This is an image, this is a convoluted feature. How it happens, you go over the different parts of the image and extract all the important features. So what you call as a convoluted feature. After that happens, that is your convolution. What is soft ordering one-dimensional convolution neural network? This is what we are here to discuss about. This topic is, so here comes the wonderful idea. We can't feed a tabular dataset straight forward to a convolution layer because tabular features are not spatially correlated. But what if we reorder the tabular features so that they are? This particular thing is talking about the convolution layer, that tabular features are not spatially correlated. But what do we do that the tabular features are? So this talks about how to reorder the tabular features so that they are spatially correlated. Alright. So let us proceed. So this is the idea behind how the one-dimensional CNN looks like. This is what it looks like. So you have 937 features. You span the features from 937 to 4096. After that, you pass it to convolution networks. After that, you reshape it. After reshaping, you pass it to convolution networks and layers. So in other words, this particular thing is feature dimension is increased through a fully connected layer first, and the role of the layer includes providing enough pixels for the image by increasing the dimension and making the generated image meaningful by feature sorting. So what it does is takes out the initial features, expands the dimensions, and after it is done, the role of this layer is provide enough pixels for the image by increasing the dimension, making the generated image meaningful by the feature sorting. So it first increases the input from 937 features to 4096 through a standard fully convoluted layer. This layer is reshaped into 256 channels containing the size of 16. In simple words, each of the signals corresponds to a group of 16 ordered features, and we have 256 groups with different orderings. Right? So what we have over here is we have, what do you say? Each of these signals correspond to a group of 16 ordered features, and we have 256 groups with different orderings. This layer is reshaped into 256 channels of size 16, right? So basically, okay, so this particular thing, the 4096 is reshaped into 256 channels, right? With 16 size 16, right? That's understandable. So each of these signal corresponds to a group of 16 ordered features. 16 features, size 16 is 16 features. So you have 16 features, and such 256 different channels or whatever you can, or you can call it as a group. So you have 16 features in each channel, and there are such 256 channels or groups, whatever you want to call. So however, the values we observe on 16 size signals are not the same we observe in the original features, but some kind of non-linear combination of them. That is why I call them soft ordering one-dimensional CNN. What this is talking about is the values we observe on 16 size signals are not the same we observe in the original features. Alright. Obviously, because obviously, so because the original features were converted into 4096, and those 4096 were restructured into 256 cross 16, right? If you multiply 256 and 16, you would obtain 4096. So that is the reordering. But the 16 size signals are not the same as they were in the original, because we have transformed it. So this is what it is, a non-linear combination of the original features, and this non-linear combination is known as soft ordering one-dimensional CNN. Now what it is, how you can implement is this particular piece of code. You can go through it. I'll quickly go over what the parameters are. So the main parameters are the input dimension, the number of features, the output dimensions, the number of target values to fit, signal size, the size of the signals to feed the first convolution, channel, number of channels to feed the first convolution layer, channel hidden, number of channels computed by the hidden convolution layers, K, the channel increase rate for the first convolution layer. The first layer will increase channels from channel input to K into channel input. Dropout input, dropout rate at the input, dropout hidden, the dropout rate at the hidden convolution networks, and dropout output, the dropout rate at the output layers. If we go through the implementation, let's not go through the init file, because init definition is all about the layers you will be using, how it proceeds. So let's go to the forward function. Forward function is how the propagation will happen. So how the propagation will happen, you have your input X, it will go through batch norm, then it will go through a dropout, that is the input dropout, then it will get to a activation, that is CELU activation, and after that it will go to a dense one. What is dense one? Self.dense one. If you go to the self.dense one, this is nothing but this particular thing, which is linear layer from input dimension to hidden size. What is hidden size? Signal size into channel input, which is 32 into 16. 32 into 16 is 512. So it would increase to 512. So whatever it is, so basically there's an increase over here. So this is what it was talking about. In the input, then increase, then we will reshape, then again a convolution layer, then we have average pooling, another convolution layer, then we have a convolution layer, we concatenate with the original as we are doing over here. So you can follow the architecture, you can follow how it is going, but the basic idea is, the main idea is, you have the initial input, you expand the spatial dimensionality, you reshape it, then you pass on to the convolution layers, and finally obtain the output, right? Alright. So let us do the hands-on, let's get a hand study and potential of this novel neural network. In this experiment, we use the dataset from SAND, the customer transaction prediction Kaggle competition binary classification problem, consisting of predict if a customer will perform a transaction in future given an anonymized set of features of user behavior. Now, for the benchmark, we test three models: MLP, soft ordering one-dimensional CNN, and light GBM. And you can see soft ordering one-dimensional CNN is performing quite brilliantly. So this is what it was. Conclusion: the efficient feature extraction capacity of the convolution neural networks makes them undisputed winners of any computer vision problem. In this article, we review how we can take the advantage of CNNs on tabular datasets through novel soft ordering one-dimensional CNN. The idea of introducing order before the convolution layers is simple and effective. I think there's a lot of room of improvement if we define the ordering layer. One idea comes to the mind is fastmax activation in the first fully convoluted layer, which would allow us to have some kind of hard ordering. The next part of the series will review into another amazing neural network, that is Deep Insight. This is the one that obtained the first place on MOA and blew the minds of many participants. I hope you liked the article. This article was fantastic. This particular, basically, we rarely use CNNs for tabular datasets. So how you can use CNNs for tabular datasets, and this particular method is about soft ordering one-dimensional CNN, which is a particular technique. How to utilize that technique? This is all about it. This is the second topic I found, and which is quite interesting and fascinating. This is about tabular data, how will you perform binary classification on a tabular data. So all the tricks and techniques from 5 different Kaggle competitions, an article written by somebody, Sahul E.S. So this article I personally found this article quite interesting and fascinating. I wanted to discuss so that there's something we can mutually learn together. So let's talk about it. In this article, I'll discuss some gate tricks in this. So there are 5 competitions I've gone through to create this article: home credit, risk, standard customer prediction, power line fault detection, Microsoft malware prediction, and IEEE CES fraud detection. So first topic, I think there are multiple subtopics which are there. The first topic which I am able to see is the dealing with larger data sets. The second topic is data exploration. Third is data preparation. Fourth is feature engineering, and fifth is feature selection. Then comes modeling, and finally we have hyperparameter tuning and evaluation and ensembling. So this particular article I found quite interesting. Let's read about it. So what does this say? Dealing with large data sets. We recently did dealing with large data sets in the previous session. In the previous session we learned about how to deal with large data sets. So you can go through it. What this particular thing is, one issue you might face in any machine learning competition is the size of the data set. So the size of the data set is large, that is 3 GB plus for Kaggle kernels, and or any basic laptop would find it too difficult to process. So in such, how you deal is faster loading, data loading with pandas, or data compression tricks. Optimize the memory by reducing the size of some attributes. Open source like task, CUDF, paraquet format, feather format. Optimizing rank. So this is basically a whole lot of summary of what we did in the last thing, as well as there is some addition. Like we didn't discuss about feather format, we didn't discuss about paraquet, and yeah, you can go through it. The next article talks about data exploration. Data exploration always has to better understand the data and gain insights from it. So before starting to develop machine learning models, and top competitors always read and do a lot of data exploratory analysis. This helps in feature engineering and cleaning of the data. So basically, this is the ideal workflow. First is how to get the data. If the data set is huge, how do you sample, and how do you exactly obtain the data. Once you have obtained the data, how good is your data exploration? So once you do the data exploration, you get the insights from the data. Once you get the insights from the data, you will understand how to proceed with your feature engineering and how to perform your data cleaning or data transformations, whatever is necessary. Then comes the data preparation. Data preparation is handling class imbalance, smart techniques, augmentations. We have synthetic samples, we have denoising, missing data, we have categorical values, we have shuffling of the data. Finally, we have feature engineering. So basically, I can understand what the article is. There are several links over here. You can visit those links. I will not spend time by visiting individually all the links, but what I can do is I will quickly go through all the links, and the ones which I found quite relevant and worth discussing, I'll take those up and discuss with you. However, I'll drop the link of the article in the description so that you can visit and try all the articles, read and go through it, try to understand, explore what is there, what you can extract out of it. So whatever it is, so the next step which usually comes is feature engineering. You do feature engineering, alright. So we do encoding the cross validation, handling categories, cyclic features, feature engineering methods. Nice. Then comes the feature selection. Feature selection is tree explainer with the SHAP. We did SHAP in one session. Feature selection with null importances, adversarial feature validation. This is something we are yet to do. And perfect. Then comes the modeling part. So random forest, XGBoost, LightGBM, CatBoost, KnifePaste. KnifePaste is usually a good baseline model to begin with. So you can begin with KnifePaste, then proceed forward with different experimentation You can start with naive base, you can then proceed to XGBoost, LGBM, CAD boost, or you can do some CNN methods, you can do some Keras methods, so whatever you want to do. But no matter what it is, naive base or what do you say, regression models are the perfect baseline models. So these are the baseline models. On top of that, you perform various experimentation and modelings. Apart from it, how good you are at hyperparameter tuning is also one thing. Then comes the evaluation. So choosing a suitable validation strategy is extremely important to avoid huge shakeups or poor performance of the model in the private test set. The traditional 80-20 split won't work on many cases. Cross validation works in most cases. So how do you, so basically evaluation is extremely important. Your traditional train test split doesn't work. You must have been knowing. If you don't know, not an issue. So what happens is, like, this is your entire data set. It might be the case that the particular part of the data which you are taking as a test sample might not be the perfect test sample. It might be the case that you are obtaining a good, extremely high result for this particular test sample. It might be the case that you are obtaining extremely low performance on this particular test sample. So what we do is split the dataset into train test parts continuously, iteratively, so that every part of the data gets a chance to be tested. So that is what there are different strategies you can do: k-fold, stratified k-fold, group k-fold, leave one out, whatever those are. Next is other training tricks. Then we have ensembling methods: weighted, stacked, out of fold, blending with linear regression, different ensembling methods. So this particular article, why did I discuss this particular article? So we didn't learn much from this. What we learned is the workflow, and these things, although it might seem that we didn't discuss anything of great value, but this article has all the links you would love to test out, right? So if you have a tabular dataset where you want to perform a binary classification, just try out these 5 Kaggle competitions and you would be set to go. I am not yet done, so it might be the case that I might conduct sessions, doing live coding session, performing these things with you, but it's maybe in sometime near future. But whatever these are, so these are the so the beauty of the article lies in the way it provides the datasets to test out your understanding. So the first is the linking of the datasets to test out your understandings. Then comes how to deal with it. So if the dataset is large, how do you deal with it? How do you do the data exploration? So first is loading the dataset, how to deal with it. Then how do you perfectly handle the data exploration thing? This is the second part. Apart from it, we have data preparation. Then comes feature engineering. Then comes feature selection, modeling. So these are things which you already know, but how to do these things for a tabular dataset which involves binary classification. This particular article summarizes it in the best possible manner, and that's why I asked you to go through this article. This article has several links, so there are several links which are redirected from this particular article. So I cannot personally do in the limited time frame. What I can do is go through these articles and take up the most interesting topics. However, I think this article is a must for you. You must go through it and understand what is there in it. Alright, let's take our next topic. Our next topic of discussion is Keras callbacks. And this is a topic which you might have heard about, or you might be practicing, but this is something I really wanted to discuss. I really wanted to pick this topic and discuss with you one-to-one. So what this topic is, so while your model is training, these are some troubleshoot or some utilities that you would love to have so that you are not constantly monitoring your model training. So it is impossible to constantly monitor your model training if the training process is huge and is a long process. Training process is usually a longer process. The more advanced you become, the more complex the training process would become. So it is not practically possible to monitor your training process at every moment. So what this particular thing does is attaches a set of tools which might be handy to you, and those things help you monitor your deep learning things. So let us explore with the help of this article. What is this? So if you're building this and are able to troubleshoot, you're going to drive yourself insane. These are techniques called callbacks. Alright. Keras callbacks can help you fix bugs more quickly and can help you find better models. Alright. Callbacks return information from a training algorithm and while training is taking place, right? So in sense they are similar to TensorFlow's fetches parameter when you call tf session run. From the documentation, a callback is a set of functions to be applied at a given set of stages of the training procedure. You can use callbacks to get a view of the internal state and the statistics of the model during training. Now, callbacks are functions which implies that you can roll your own if needed. Second, you can use more than one callback to monitor or affect the training of your model. Here's a brief review of what I believe are the most useful ones. Perfect. So here we have the most useful ones as per this writer, Matthew Cloney. As per Matthew Cloney, we have these. He finds these many useful. So let's read about it. What is base logger and history? So you get these without doing anything special. They're applied to the model by default. By convention, most of the time you call model.fit without assigning the result to anything. Instead of calling this, you can call the history. This is something we already know. So we didn't know that this was exactly a callback happening. So what happens during model.fit? That is also a callback happening, and the by default the callback of the history callback is returned back to the model is returned back, but we don't save it anywhere. If you want to save it at any variable, the results will be saved. Perfect. Apart from it, this is something which is quite often and frequently used by many of the people. So what is it? Model checkpoint. This particular thing is about this callback saves your model as a checkpoint. So what is about a checkpoint? So you might have attempted any course, you might be doing any course, you might have done any video game, you might be doing any project. So everything has a checkpoint. What is a checkpoint? So this is like you defined it. This is a particular stage that I want to save the model and I don't want to lose the progress. So if this is the amount of performance if this particular amount of performance has been obtained, I want to save the model and store it somewhere, so that even if something happens with the session crashes, or something of the model training diverges, if the gradients diverge and go in a wrong direction, so at least I have the weights till the point it went good, and I can restore those weights till the point it went good. So that is where you can use model checkpoint. Apart from it, this is especially handy for models where epochs take an extremely long time, or if you're running them on AWS spot instances and the spot instances rises over your maximum bid. Perfect. What is CSV logger? CSV logger is pretty self-explanatory. It writes a CSV log containing the information about epochs, accuracy, loss to disk, so that you can inspect it later. It's great if you want to roll your own graphs or keep a record of your own model training process over the time. The graph above was created from one of those files. Perfect. Early stopping, you might have heard about it. This is extremely common. So early stopping is a step to reduce the overfitting. You monitor some parameters, and if the parameter value is not desirable, it's not proceeding in the desirable or in the way it should proceed, that is the point where you call early stopping. So one technique to reduce overfitting in neural networks is to use early stopping. Perfect. Early stopping prevents overtraining of your model by terminating the training process if it's really not training. This is pretty flexible. You can control what metric to control and for how many epochs in a row. Perfect. So how it happens, basically how it happens, so what you do is you define that this is the particular thing. Let's say you're monitoring the validation accuracy, or you're monitoring the validation loss. If the validation loss is not decreasing for next 5 epochs, then it means you're just overfitting, decreasing for a certain threshold, not for negligible amount, decreasing by a significant amount. If it is not, then stop the model training right there. What is remote monitor? I don't know about it. So this callback sends JSON status messages via HTTP post method. This could be easily integrated with Power Sub messaging like Kafka, or a queue like Amazon SQS. For instance, you would set up a lightweight HTTP endpoint and route any posted JSON as a payload to an SQS queue. You could then have another process monitor the queue to kick off other process or to handle specific events. LR scheduler, we already know about it. You must have heard about LR scheduler. So Adam has most of the optimizer algorithms which we preferably use like Adam or RMS Prop. They have their well-defined learning rate scheduling. But if you want a learning rate which is a custom tailored or user defined, so in that particular scenario you would love to use learning rate scheduler. Now what this is determines the size of the steps taken during the gradient descent process. And yeah, basically this is how you define how you want your learning rate to change as per the changing epochs. This is not defined quite good over here, but this is what happens. Apart from it, what we have over here is TensorBoard. What is TensorBoard? You must have heard about it. So TensorFlow is famous for TensorBoard. So this is out of the box callback. Absolutely, the way it is described is out of the box callback, and I completely agree with it. By using a TensorBoard callback, so every log which is written over here, CSV logger, you can interact with those logs in a real time. So that's a visualization tools which is quite handy and effective. Lastly, we have Lambda callback. I have not heard about it. If none of the fit, you can create your own callback. Yeah, custom callbacks. That's what it is. If you just want to create a basic one, you can use Lambda callback. This allows you to trigger events when an epoch, batch, or a training process begins or ends. If you want to create something a little more complex, you can create your own callback by inheriting this class. This only works who truly want to know the low-level control over how a callback is executed. You may also want to create your own callback if you are implementing some custom logic that's not available in existing callbacks. Alright, so that perfectly sums up the article as well as our understanding of how and what are Keras callbacks and when and how to use the callbacks. Usually a combination of callbacks are used. Sometimes you might not use the callback, sometimes you would use a callback. So entirely depending on the situation and the need of the situation, how you want to use, how to utilize what callbacks are, how it can be useful for you. So ultimately it boils down to your use case, your situation, the thing which you're dealing with, the thing which is right in front of you. Ultimately it boils down to it. Nevertheless, that sums up the article and we proceed. Let us extend this topic by practically implementing how to use callbacks. So callbacks, how to use callbacks, the ones we just discussed are the ones which are the traditional ones. So you have traditional, you have custom. So traditionals are usually handy and useful. However, there might be some situations where you would love to know some better details or customize or deliver the output as per your need case, as per your use case. And how would you achieve that? That is with the help of custom callbacks. So let us begin. So this is a code which I wrote so as to save time. So we will not focus and waste time on the data set or the preparation of it. That is a different topic. What we are devoting our time to is custom callbacks. So we obtained the MNIST data, we have reshaped it, we have obtained X train, Y train, and we can see everything is flattened. Perfect. Y train needs to be converted to a categorical variable. Although you can ignore it, you can use the way it is. Either you can use categorical cost entropy or you can use sparse cost entropy. However, that is not the point of concern. Let us convert it into categorical. tf.keras.utils.to categorical and Y train. Yep, we do obtain good values and that is it. For Y test, something similar. Perfect. Let's obtain the model summary. This is the model summary. Let us compile a model. Once you do that, what happens is you've obtained the model. You're done with the model summary, right? Let us fit a model. This is without any callback. The way we usually do. Model.fit, we have X train, we have Y train, we have validation data equal to, or let it be, let's use that as the scoring data. Epochs equal to 3, batch size equal to 16. Perfect. So this is the traditional one. Model.score or model.evaluate. This is the traditional one. We are not focusing on the training part or anything. We have not mentioned the metric. Metrics equal to accuracy. So this is the performance metric, 92% accuracy on the test data, and this is an extremely trivial model. Let's not focus on the triviality or the simplicity of the model. Let's focus on the callbacks. So how would you implement a custom callbacks? Let's go over here and see custom callbacks, custom TF Keras callbacks. So the first thing which you would be able to see is these are the functions which are provided. So if obviously if you won't be writing everything from the scratch, so what you would be doing is class custom callback, and over here you would be inheriting from tf keras callbacks dot callback, right? Def init self, and if any method is there. So what are there? On train test predict begin, on train test predict end, and at the batch level and at epoch level. So we have 3 levels. We have a global method that is on training begin, on training end. On batch level is called before processing a particular batch, unit of batch. So let's see them, let's observe them one by one. Right? So if you were to begin with this, right? So next time our compilation would be same, but the way we fit the model would be different. So this time it would be model.fit equal to everything like the previous one, but we would have callbacks equals to our custom callback and call it as a function. Call it as a class object. Perfect. This is it. This is it how it would be. We have not defined it. Let's define. Let's get it done. So there's no init over here. What is needed to be defined is the, let's say what I want to achieve. Let's say at every epoch, at the beginning of every epoch, I want to print the log values, and at the beginning rather than at the end, I want to print at the beginning of epoch. So def on epoch begin, right? Self epoch logs equal to none. Now let's take a look at what is there in the epoch and what is there in the logs. This is extremely simple. This is the most basic callback, custom callback. This is not achieving anything great, and this is not something you would devote your time to. This is the basic idea that these are the 6 things: epoch level, batch level, and your global level. Added to this, you can do any customization, anything you want to achieve, right? So let's see how it goes. So on epoch begin, you see epoch is 0 and the logs are empty. At another epoch begin, the epoch is 0, epoch is 1, logs are empty. Now let us do this and change this to epoch end, and you will observe the difference. So nothing is printed for the custom callback as of now. Now this is what we are observing. Loss value is this, accuracy value is this, which is same as what is over here. So what I want to do is, I don't want epoch wise now. What I want is on batch wise. And this would be batch wise. So on batch wise, what parameters do we have? We have batch rather than epoch. So this is the batch 1. Within the epoch 1, we have batch 1, batch 1, batch 2, batch 3, and so many batches we have. Right, and over here we can see epoch 2 starts. Whoa, I think it's taking a lot of time because we are printing every batch. So never ever do this. Never ever do this. Don't print every batch. But you can see the minor improvements happening. We are yet 500 instances far. 500 batches for, and yep. So you can see using a callback does affect the time taken to train an epoch. So the time taken to train one particular epoch was 3 to 5 seconds. However, due to since you were involved in printing every patch, so what we can do is, if the patch is divisible by, so what we can do over here is so what we do is, if, let's correct this, rectify this, this is a batch. If the batch number is divisible by 500, only in that particular case you shall update me about what is happening and how it is happening. If and only if it is divisible by 500, then deliver me the logs, else let it be. Or 700. That's the modification we are about to do. Yeah, and what else we can do? So you can see at few intervals we are able to obtain how the accuracy is improving. We are not training from scratch in this particular instance, because as this is the continuation of this particular instance. If we compile again, then and only it would be instantiated. Then only it would be reinitiated. However, in case of sklearn models, if you fit the model again, then the model gets reset automatically. But that is not the scope of discussion, and we can see our callback happening. So let's proceed to something more complex. So this was the initial level. Now let's see how to define our callbacks for model evaluate. So if we were to define callback for model evaluation or testing, how would it be? On test batch and self batch logs equal to none, print the batch and the logs. Perfect. So let us evaluate this model.evaluate using our xtest and ytest. So you can observe this is what we are obtaining. We have not delivered any callback. Now this is how it would be with the help of a callback. Perfect. You can increase the patch size for simplification. Let's say patch size is equal to 128. That would result in a lesser number of outputs. Now let us proceed to something bit more complex, that is early stopping. So how would you implement early stopping over here? So over here we can see how to implement early stopping. So if you were to this particular part from here, this particular code and this particular code, these two particular codes are about how to implement how to re-implement, or how to basically override the ones which are already implemented. So you can see, so what it does is class early stopping custom, inherit the Keras callback, define self, and define the patience level that would be mentioned while initiating the function call. Over here what we have, let's do a super for inheriting, or the super is something you already know. That's an oops concept. Yup. And what we have over here is patience, we have best rates. So over this particular part of the code, what we are doing is just initializing the init part. The what do you say is, whenever this particular class object is initiated, these things would be done first. Now let's define 3 parameters. So why are 3 parameters defined? On training begin, on training end, and this is on epoch end. So on training is the global aspect, right? So training begin and training end. Def on train begin this is the global aspect, right? Training happens when the training starts and when the training ends. In between what happens, we are not concerned of. Now this is the whatever happens in between the training. So on epoch end, what do you want to do? Let's define over here. So on training begin, right? What would be the parameters we want is we want self dot weight equal to 0. We want self dot stopped epoch number, this is optional, equal to 0, and self dot best equals to np dot infinity, right? Now what we are looking at is after a training end. So weight is defined for patients, right? If the patient's value, which was custom defined, let's say we have a patient's value of 5, check weight for 5 epochs. If even after 5 epochs there's no improvement, stop the training over there, right over there. So our patient's value would be 5. So how does on training end happen? And let's define this particular part on training end. So on training end, if the stopped epoch is greater than 0, right? And what you say is print that we have early stopped at epoch number on training end. How it is on training end, on training end, on training end, on training end. What am I looking for is over here on training end, self logs. Yep. So over here we have self logs equal to none. We have early stopped at epoch number, self dot stopped epoch, and with the metrics as logs. Perfect. Now let us implement the logic. So after every epoch ends, you would check that whether or not the loss value is better than the previous. If the loss value is better than the previous, then proceed. If the loss value is worse or is not showing any improvement, then let's check if has it exceeded the patient's value. If it has exceeded the patient's value, then stop the training right over there. And if it hasn't, then keep training until and unless it shows a sign of improvement or it exceeds the patient's value. So what we would have over here is we would obtain the current loss value and store it at logs, what do you say, loss value, right? Perfect. So what we do is if the current is less than the self dot best, then what we do is self dot best equals to current and self dot weights equal to 0. Self dot best weights equals, this is optional, however you can do this for model saving purpose, right? So dot get weights you can also checkpoint it with the scope of checkpointing it. So what you can do is model dot save dot whatever it is, self dot model dot get weights, and save it with another name, whatever you want to do. Apart from it, if it is not better than the previous value or the best value, what we'll do is we'll increase the weight number. Now, after increasing the weight number, is the weight number greater than equal to the patient's value? If it is, then what do? Is we are defining that, okay, now let us stop the training and save the stopped epoch as the epoch number. Self.best model.stop training and set the weights. So this is also the another case where you will be using the best weights which was stored earlier. Apart from this, there's nothing much. So let's see how it goes. Let's train with the help of a custom epoch of early stopping. Let's increase the path size a bit. Yeah, there's a conflicting on train begin. Let's remove this part. So what do we see here? Nothing much. So we have not trained for a large number of epochs. Let's train for 30 epochs. Another thing, we are early stopping based on the log value. We can use the accuracy value to observe difference. Okay, let us stop the training. Let's see how it goes for accuracy. And every time it says print new best achieved. Weighting value at self.weight. New best achieved. New best achieved. Weighting value at 1. Weighting value at 2. Weighting value at 3. Weighting value at 4. Weighting value at 5. And we are stopped. This is the beauty of customization. And the last part of the code is how to implement custom LR. So that is not much difficult. So you are inheriting this particular thing. This is very similar. Now this particular thing is scheduling. Scheduling is your LR schedule. You define your own schedule. So you might define a cyclic schedule. We have defined many custom LRs. So either of those. So you define a function how the LR would change with the help of epochs. So on epoch begin, so you would not change the epoch. You can change the epoch after the epoch ends or before the epoch begins, right? So at when the epoch begins, what you do is you get the LR value, you find the LR and set it with the help of TF-Keras backend. There's nothing much over here. So I won't discuss this. However, this was the beauty, and you saw how we did the customizations, how we did, and how we implemented it. I hope this was helpful to you. Alright, let's wrap the session over here. Take care, bye bye.